Hello everybody and welcome to the stream tonight. I am recording the next episode of The Private Citizen, which will be episode 49 tonight. So that's what you're here for. And I've got me some lovely Tari Lapsang to go with that. What are we doing? We're recording a podcast, so I'm pretty much all set up here. I'm just going to run a quick test, and I'm getting right into it because this could be a long show. So settle back. Maybe now is the time to run out, get yourself a drink. Maybe something warm if it's as cold where you are. It's currently, what do we have here? 8 degrees in Düsseldorf, but it feels a lot colder. I have I've been just feeling cold recently, so I have deployed the sheepskin to keep me company while I do this. So let's run a little test here. Hello, we are testing. Hello. 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 Maybe like that. What are we aiming for? 14? That's maybe that's good. Yeah, that seems to work. Let's see if it actually worked. Hello, we are testing. Hello. Hello. Maybe like that. What are we aiming for? 14? That's maybe that's good. Yeah, that sounds like it's working. Was geht? Hallo Stefan. Hello, how are you doing? I am recording a podcast. That's what's geht. My privacy podcast. This just reminds me I have to check something. Hello. I have to quickly open a browser tab that could have revealing information in there. So I'm not gonna. Yeah, so that works. So I'm just gonna had to turn screen sharing off there for a second. Back pain. Still pill starts. Back pain is a pain in the back. I know how you feel. When I was working in an office, Man, I had back pain, but it's good when the pain medication kicks in, and then I don't know if you have the same back pain as me. I have like this. I had this, you move wrong, and then you have like muscle things, and then basically it'll get worse and worse because you keep overcorrecting, and sooner or later you look like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. So you basically have to throw a pain pill, and then because it doesn't hurt anymore, your body starts relaxing. 4 kilo turkey Thanksgiving dinner. Oh yes, you were the person with the American girlfriend. So I'm guessing that's sequester disc 2 centimeter sequester that's way worse than what I had. Yes, so I hope you're having a good Thanksgiving. I mean, for us Germans, Thanksgiving is not traditionally celebrated, but if you're together with a US girl, of course you have to. So I hope you know how to do turkey. My only knowledge in turkey preparation comes from the TV show Home Improvement, or as it's known in Germany, Hör mal, wer da hämmert. Such a good German name. It's like American title, Home Improvement. Home Improvement, German title, Hör mal, wer da hämmert. What? This freaking scoring. Well, I wish you good luck. Hello, Indy. How are you doing? Yes, of course you know both names. I'm just saying this for other people who might not know. I'll get, there's lots of people listening to this or watching this who are not from Germany and would not know our peculiar ways of translating titles when we dub series, which is amazing. The Binford 5000, indeed. Har, har, har. More power. Yes, but I'll get into the show now because this will be a long show, so I'm just gonna. If you haven't been here yet, this is when I do these things. This is my podcast setup. See, Indy's like, what? All I know the German from is the Hogan's Heroes. Yeah, Schulz. I'm really loud when I shout into the microphone, like to myself. So I have to turn myself a bit down here. Spaceballs. Yeah, indeed. But I'll get into this now. So if you haven't been here while I do this, this is my setup. This is my podcast recording application. And this is how it goes. So settle back, everybody. I'm gonna tell you about the crypto wars now, and this might take some time. So get yourself settled in. And as usual, I'll keep an eye on the chat. But since I'm recording a podcast here, I'm not gonna interact. I would say at Twitch. Typically, I'll keep an eye on things that might be relevant and. Just relax and imagine you're listening to a podcast. And if you miss something, don't worry, it'll be out as a podcast later tonight. So let's see if I can do an intro on the first try, which is always the hard part here. Let's start recording and then. Let's. Oh no! I moved the this window is freaky somehow. I don't know. Anyway, let's do this. You're listening to The Private Citizen, defending your right to have something to hide. This is episode 49 for Wednesday, the 25th of November, 2020. Crypto Wars Redux. Hello everybody, I'm your host Fab, coming to you live from the city of Düsseldorf in Germany, or as we like to call it down here, Dedorf, on the Rhine, in lockdown, live from lockdown once again. Thanks for listening to the show. Thanks for being here. This is episode 49. almost at 50 episodes. And today we're going to talk about crypto wars. This is something I've talked about. I've kind of teased before. The important topic that's been all over the news for a while now, and I just didn't get around to it. There was too much coronavirus stuff going on, and other stuff was going on. So, yeah. But now I finally made it. I'm here. And as always, as I do these days, I'm recording this live on Twitch, and people are definitely not trying to distract me right now with pointless messages. So if you wanna, this is something new I'm doing, new in air quotes. So if you wanna follow along while these episodes are recorded, you could do so when I record them, which is usually on a Wednesday, obviously. And my Twitch channel is Foxtrot Alpha Bravo. And the alpha is spelled as in the phonetic alphabet with an F. So twitch.tv Foxtrot Alpha Bravo. But chances are you're listening to this in your car or somewhere else as a podcast. So don't mind any of that crazy stuff I just talked about. Settle yourself in. This could be a long episode. I've got some Tari Lapsang tea to go here because... I need to stay awake. No, it's not like this is boring, but I've had a long day and I need some energy. I put some rock sugar in there to give me some energy. I've also deployed the sheepskin on my gaming seat because it's getting cold here. I don't know how it is where you are in the world. If you're in Australia, obviously it'll be getting hot. Over here, it's now getting cold and I'm kind of freezing. But before we get into the main topic of the show, I have something to mention. An upcoming hiatus. Don't worry, it's not going to be a long one. But I thought about how to do this. I usually with previous podcasts I recorded, I've always taken off a week or two over the Christmas and New Year's holidays to kind of relax. And wearing a t-shirt isn't helping is already a comment in Twitch chat. Yes, of course. But I'm sitting on a sheepskin, right? If I was actually wearing a hoodie now, this is a bloody warm sheepskin. But anyway, yes. So I'm gonna take a bit of time off. Here, not immediately, not now. I'm definitely going to finish this episode. No, so my plan is, so this is episode 49. The current plan is I hope I can get this done. As usual, this is kind of beholden to the vagaries of my schedule as a freelancer. But the plan is that I'm going to record 2 more episodes. And then I'm going to take the rest of the year off. So that would be another episode, which will hopefully be released later this week, or which I'm record and release later this week. And then an episode on Wednesday, the 2nd of December, which will be, if all goes according to plan, episode 51. And that episode, I will do a kind of a year in review, look back at the topics I talked about in 2020, and things, the important topics, and I'll try to maybe see a trend in there, or try to summarize the year a bit, which this year it's probably gonna be relatively easy. It's gonna be the coronavirus Armageddon, but yeah, so I'll do that. That'll be the final episode for the year, and then I'm gonna take the rest of December off, and I'm gonna recharge my batteries a little bit. But I also want to rethink the show a little bit. Nothing drastic, but think about what I've been doing, what's been working, what hasn't, and try to re-examine, take stock, and maybe change some things for 2021. Something I'm definitely going to change is the website. I'm going to work, not drastically. I'm going to work a bit, take the time, work a little bit on the website, and then if everything goes according to plan, I'll be back on Wednesday, the 6th of January, 2021, just back on schedule, on the Wednesday schedule, with a podcast as usual. I mean, there might be some minor changes, but I'm not gonna change things, I'm gonna tell you about them beforehand. I think that's just fair. So much for the plans. Yeah, that's it. So I think that's reasonable. Taking a few weeks off over the holidays. You'll probably have things to do anyway. I don't know what I depending on what holidays will look like this year where you are. But I think it's if you haven't caught up, there's some time to catch up to some episodes. Although if you haven't caught up, you won't be listening to this until after the fact, and you won't you'll just be wondering why I'm not releasing any episodes. But as usual, I mean, this is all also in the show notes. Even if you're not caught up, you can always go ahead and look at what's in the show notes for the current show. And when I'm talking about the show notes, obviously privatecitizen.press is where they are. And that's where all the information is on the current show as well, and all the links and everything. So it's worth going there. Today there's actually quite a lot in the show notes. So privatecitizen.press as usual for that. And so now we should talk about the main topic, I think. So as I said before, this is something I've had on my radar to talk about for quite some time, because I mean this has been in the news pretty much since summer, and it's been identified as a topic very early on as well, because this is new. What I'm talking about is the crypto wars. And before we get into what's been going on recently and why that is important and what we have to watch out for, I think it is pertinent at this point to go back in time and talk a little bit about history. So what, some of you might not be aware of this. This is pretty much, a lot of this is inside baseball. If you're into IT security and to cryptography, you'll know all of this. But, people that are primarily interested in privacy might not. And also people who might be a bit younger or haven't, I'm feeling that there's always these focal points in time when people get interested in a topic. And I guess the Snowden revelations was almost 10 years now. When was that? 2012? That was, or was it 2013, right? Yeah. So that was a focal point where a lot of people got interested into privacy. And maybe I'm feeling like the current situation we had this year, with all the, the coronavirus stuff, the tracking, the tracing, these new laws, in some countries, mandatory tracking, has probably gotten people interested. Some people might have found this show, who do not have this background knowledge. So I think it's good at this point to have a little history lesson. Also, some people might know I did study history at university. I didn't get a degree, but I spent 13 semesters just studying this. So history to me is interesting. Although some of this won't qualify as history, because history in the historic science sense usually means, from the time you are in right now, it's always 30 years back. So earlier than 1990 right now, that would be considered history, because usually, just a little aside here, it's usually considered that in historical science, because there's usually a 30-year documents are classified, even if they're not classified documents, just everything foreign policy stuff, even if it's not classified, it's usually kept under lock and seal for 30 years. And that's usually the time when most governments release that. So everything within those 30 years is usually the realm of political science, which is used to looking at, contemporary sources, newspapers, as they come out and stuff like that, and stories as they develop. And historical science will be usually later, or a time frame older than 30 years, where you can get access to documents and stuff like that. Anyway, let's talk about the crypto wars, how they came into being, and what is it. So the idea of crypto wars came came to be in the Cold War. I mean, we're talking back in the 70s, 80s here, and it began with ideas of, as far as I can tell, export regulations from the US and allied countries to block or prevent the Eastern Bloc, or the Warsaw Pact countries from gaining access to cryptography or cryptographic systems that could defeat the US or its allies spying on them. So they didn't want US companies developing encryption that would then get exported, to Soviet countries, and then the Soviets would use that, and the US intelligence agencies wouldn't be able to crack that. They wanted to prevent that. So they started to having export restrictions. More on that in a bit. So as Wikipedia puts it, they have a page on the crypto wars, and the introduction is, the crypto wars is an unofficial name for the US and allied governments' attempts to limit the public's and foreign nations' access to cryptography strong enough to resist decryption by national intelligence agencies. And in these export restrictions, this being a child of the 70s, but primarily the 80s, they did interesting things. They defined encryption technologies as weapons or as munitions. And they did that to get this, I think this is a political thing, to get these restrictions. Now, why are we even talking about this? The Cold War is over. Now, the thing is, after the Berlin Wall fell and the Cold War, people realized that the Cold War was over, a lot of things from the Cold War got rolled back, but some just stuck. And this is one of these. So these export restrictions stuck. This is why, if you're into IT security or into cryptography, if you ever configured SSL cipher suits or something like this, you will know the term of export ciphers. To this day, we have special ciphers, a version of ciphers, cryptographic algorithms that are weaker, that are so-called export ciphers. And these are, to employ an old catchphrase of mine, crap. They are crap. This is to some degree still a thing. If you go to the show notes, privatecitizen.press, I have a link there to the Wassenaar Agreement. This is the thing that is still this weapons restrictions, export restrictions agreement between the US and allied countries, and now also other countries. That continues to be a thing. It continues to include, so in 2013, they revised these, and there was a big cry in IT security circles about that as well. But they for example, they put intrusion software. It's not quite, until this day, it's not quite clear what that is, but like malware and stuff like that. And network surveillance systems are in there. So, US companies or companies from allied countries, Germany being one, enforce certain restrictions on companies exporting this kind of technology. Although in practice, I can tell you from my years of working as an IT security reporter, this is all pretty much bullshit, because there's a well-known German company, for example, that they're German, UK, whatever, they've been known under various names, but the most commonly known name is Finfisher. They were originally from Munich. They're a company designing Trojans, so that the Trojan was called Finfisher, that you, for example, can put on, that states would use to put on people's mobile phones and then exfiltrate their messages, even if they use encrypted services like WhatsApp or other crypto messengers. And, that would theoretically, I would think, fall under these export restrictions. But they were, they were exporting this to countries, to regimes in the Middle East that were spying on people that, you would think this kind of exporting wouldn't be allowed. But then, Germany also exports weapons, handguns and tanks and rifles and planes, I think, to these countries. So, as usual, if you're powerful and you have money, these export restrictions don't seem to apply, but they definitely did apply to software. Now, the most well-known that I would say, the biggest battle fought in the crypto wars, this was in the 90s, was something called the Clipper chip, which you might have heard about. And I'm going to read a little bit from Wikipedia here. The Clipper chip was a chipset that was developed and promoted by the United States National Security Agency, NSA, as an encryption device that secured, quote, voice and data messages, end quote, with a built-in backdoor that was intended to, quote, allow federal, state, and local law enforcement officials the ability to decode intercepted voice and data transmissions, end quote. It was intended to be adopted by telecommunications companies for voice transmission. Sorry, I'm wrangling my mic. Boom. Introduced in 1993, it was entirely defunct by 1996. Organizations such as the Electronic Privacy Information Center and the Electronic Frontier Foundation challenged the Clipper chip proposal, saying that it would have the effect not only of subjecting citizens to increased and possibly illegal government surveillance, but that the strength of the Clipper chip's encryption could not be evaluated by the public, and as its design was classified secret, and that therefore individuals and businesses might be hobbled with an insecure communications system. And it was, just as an aside, there were security vulnerabilities found in this thing, so this turned out to be true. Further, it was pointed out that while American companies could be forced to use the Clipper chip in their encryption products, foreign companies could not. Makes sense, kind of, And presumably phones with strong data encryption would be manufactured abroad and spread throughout the world and into the United States, negating the point of the whole exercise and, of course, materially damaging US manufacturers en route. The release and development of several strong cryptographic software packages such as Nautilus, PGP, very well known, and PGP Phone was in response to the government push for the Clipper chip. The thinking was that if strong cryptography was freely available on the internet as an alternative, the government would be unable to stop its use. And that kind of worked. This is basically reporting by news organizations, lobbying by organizations like the EFF, and basically this approach of open source cryptography that everybody could use becoming prevalent on the internet basically had this effect and made it so that the Clipper chip, was never really came into being. So disaster averted. But the Clipper chip always serves as a great example of what the U.S. government, which ideas the U.S. government has and what it wants to do in, a perfect world as the U.S. government sees it. And as this whole situation was going on, and there was a public debate about this also caused these export restrictions to come under fire, and in the end caused them to be negated. So quoting further from Wikipedia here, this is now about the export restrictions again. God, okay. Sorry, I'm going to have to put an edit note here to get that COVID cough out of that. No, I don't have COVID. Hello, Trent, by the way. I'm not saying hello to people because I'm recording a podcast. I'm making why don't I remember the word I wanted to say? An exception. I'm making an exception here because I have to edit this out anyway. So let's keep going. I don't know where I was. Damn it. So this public discussion about about this also brought the no, that doesn't really work. Quoting take 5. Quoting again from Wikipedia, this time about the export restrictions. Legal challenges by Peter Younger and other civil libertarians and privacy advocates, the widespread availability of encryption software outside the US, and the perception by many companies that adverse publicity about weak encryption was limiting their sales and the growth of e-commerce led to a series of relaxations in US export controls, culminating in 1996 in President Bill Clinton's signing of the Executive Order 13026, transferring the commercial encryption from the munition list to the commerce control list. Furthermore, the order stated that, quote, the software shall not be considered or treated as technology, end quote, in the sense of export administration regulations. This order permitted the United States Department of Commerce to implement rules that greatly simplified the export of proprietary and open source software containing cryptography, which they did in 2000. So this kind of all ended the one could say the first round of the crypto wars. And as you can see here, it was kicked off by civil rights activists and privacy activists and these kind of people and organizations. But it kind of didn't succeed because of that. It succeeded because of companies. As usual, often with US policy, it succeeded because this was in the end of the 90s, early 2000s. This was the bubble and e-commerce and all of that getting launched, and companies basically seeing all the money that was lying around, and they wanted their part of this. And quite correctly, they saw that this growth of the internet into a commerce platform needed encryption, and that the idea that the US was hobbling its own encryption would be detrimental to all of this all of these commercial enterprises. So this kind of killed the first iteration of the crypto wars, but it's been going on ever since. We basically have to keep in mind that there is a big block in US policy making, and something people, my colleagues in the mainstream media often call quote the intelligence community. I do not like that term because people who use it tend to be on their side or not understand what they're talking about. Glenn Greenwald keeps calling this the security state, which is a bit drastic, but I think puts it, is closer to the truth. I mean, this is the agencies, the three-letter agencies, CIA, FBI, NSA, all the other agencies, Homeland Security. This is all the people that the politicians that kind of further their interests. Interestingly, I talked with Mike in the last episode. I mentioned Adam Schiff, who chairs the intelligence, that committee of the House that is supposed to oversee the intelligence services, but often seems to fulfill quite the opposite role. They often seem to just parrot propaganda from the intelligence services, which intelligence services are naturally good at. And it is clear that the US intelligence services and people closely related to them in government have never given up this idea of getting rid of usable security for normal people, right, or for civilians. This was made abundantly clear in the Snowden revelations, with Snowden documents, where we had, lots of material from the NSA that made it clear that the NSA and other services are still trying to circumvent encryption whenever they can, which is understandable, which is their job, with programs like Bull Run and stuff like that. But it also made clear the attitude they have. And the attitude they have is also that they think their lives would be a lot easier and the world would be a better place if civilians just didn't have workable encryption, or if, the government could circumvent this encryption whenever it wanted. And they keep pushing for this. This is usually, we know the arguments. This is new to nobody. The arguments are usually child pornography, child abuse, terrorism. The argument is the police must see into messages from criminals, otherwise we can't prevent things like 9/11 happening and stuff like that, which is all bullshit. It's been all it's been debunked. It is clear that you can find people who produce and distribute child pornography and even who consume it without breaking encryption. The police does that pretty much every day. It is clear that, things like 9/11, especially 9/11, wasn't caused by the government not being able to see into people's messages. Actually, 9/11 is a very good example of why the government had it just communicated effectively, and the different arms of the government, they might have actually prevented or had forewarning of this event, mostly because they didn't have to see the messages from the terrorists. It's there've been lots of studies, and there's lots of interesting stuff written about this that shows really clearly what you can do with just metadata. You can identify terrorist cells and their leaders and who they're connected with just by who is talking to whom at what time. You don't actually need to see the content of the messages. You can clearly see patterns, and you can train algorithms and AI, as they would say these days, to detect this kind of thing. And with that, we basically we end our history lesson, and we come to the current day. We see that these government organizations are still, if they had their way, they would try to get rid of workable encryption. And when I say working encryption, because usually you will read in, especially in more mainstream publications, you will read a quote, or even the journalists themselves talking about strong encryption. And to me, that is working encryption, because the strong encryption implies that there's also weak encryption, which kind of implies that that there's just the quality of encryption, but weak encryption is still encryption, right? And that is not really a good reflection of the truth, because it's either strong encryption or there's no encryption at all. We're talking the NSA here being your adversary. If your adversary is the NSA, and which it is in this case, as we have seen, they are working on circumventing this kind of encryption for private citizens, for lack of a better term. And if your adversary is the CIA, you need state-of-the-art encryption. You need the best you can get, because anything else, they will probably be able to break. They might even be able to break the state-of-the-art encryption. But let's not get it. Let's assume they can't. But there's no weak encryption. You either have working encryption or you don't have working encryption. So I think it's very important to make that distinction while you're talking about these kind of things. And of course, there are currently efforts underway in the US in legislation and lawmaking to circumvent working encryption, or to undermine it, or to even, currently I don't think so much outlaw it, but basically to undermine it with laws. So during the summer and early in the year, there was there's an anti-encryption law called Lawful Access Encrypted Data Act, which was proposed by a number of senators. And then, of course, there was the Earn It Act, which is primarily about free speech, but it also has a privacy angle. And I talked about this in episode 30. So if you want to know more about that, you can listen to that episode. That's basically where it stands. It hasn't been passed yet. As far as I can tell, it's currently in the House, and it's been debated in subcommittees, I think. I do feel that with Biden being president, we will get more of this. I think, this is, you can, if you haven't listened to the previous episode where I talk with Mike about my opinions of the presidential election and of Joe Biden, I feel, and the more I read about him and who he's putting into what offices, I feel I worry more and more about privacy and encryption being more under attack than it was under Trump. I do think he's being backed by a lot of neocons that were also active under Obama, but Obama seems to have kind of kept them under control. I think they're now coming back with a vengeance, and I don't really trust. I don't think Biden can keep them under control. And in case of Biden being replaced by Kamala Harris, I don't think she wants to. She said herself she's a prosecutor. She would be a prosecutor president. And prosecutors and law enforcement are the people who are on the other side of this, who, makes their life massively easier if there's no encryption, and their jobs easier. So I don't know. I worry that with Biden, this is going to get worse. If you want to specifically know why I think the people he's allied with are neocon-backed warmongers, I put a link in the show notes, privatecitizen.press, to a great article by Glenn Greenwald on his Substack, where he talks about these people and, where they're coming from. I mean, we're talking, people like ex-CIA, John Brennan, the daughter of Dick Cheney, being part of this. And these are all the people who, try to prevent Trump from pulling troops out of Afghanistan. I don't feel. I think they are too much in bed with the military-industrial complex, so to speak, to use a almost propagandistic term. But I feel, I feel like those are the people who are also not our friends when it comes to keeping strong encryption. But to get back from the US, because in the US, this currently, this is a battleground that's going on, but in the US, this is currently paused for obvious reasons. We talked about on the show, the presidential election. There's things going on in the US. I think this will be a renewed effort next year when Biden's in office. And, these ex-CIA people who are now commentators on MSNBC and CNN are all back in the fold and will be helping to get this legislation passed. The current battleground is actually the EU. And interestingly, basically the same thing is going on, driven by the German government, which currently is chairing the Council of the European Union, so kind of steering the ship when it comes to getting legislation proposed. And quoting here from a article by the EFF on this. After I've taken a few sips of tea to oil my voice here a little bit. So the EFF says, the last few months have seen a steady stream of proposals encouraged by the advocacy of the FBI and Department of Justice to provide, quote, lawful access, end quote, to end-to-end encrypted services in the United States. Now lobbying has moved from the US, where Congress has been largely paralyzed by the nation's polarization problems, to the European Union, where advocates for anti-encryption laws hope to have a smoother ride. Series of leaked documents from the EU's highest institutions show a blueprint for how they intend to make that happen, with the apparent intention of presenting anti-encryption law to the European Parliament within the next year. Speaking at a webinar, and here we come with the buzzwords and the thing that's always trodden out when we want to do this. Speaking at a webinar on, quote, preventing and combating child sexual abuse and exploitation, Johansson, who is, I think, I need to look this up. I didn't put that in the stuff I quoted here. Who was this Johansson person? Again, Ylva Johansson, the EU's Commissioner for Home Affairs. So, speaking at a webinar on preventing and combating child sexual abuse and exploitation, Johansson called for a, quote, technical solution, end quote. Nice Nazi language there. To what she described as the, quote, problem of encryption, and announced that her office had initiated a, quote, a special group of experts from academia, government, civil society, I'm making a German now because of the Nazi quote, and business to find ways of detecting and reporting encrypted child sexual abuse material, end quote. Subsequent report was subsequently, and this is bad writing, subsequent report was subsequently leaked to Politico. It includes, and I've links to this in the show notes, by the way. It includes a laundry list of torturous ways to achieve the impossible, allowing government access to encrypted data without somehow breaking encryption. At the top of that precarious stack was, as with similar proposals in the United States, client-side scanning. We've explained previously why client-side scanning is a backdoor by another name. Unalterable computer code that runs on your device, comparing in real time the contents of your messages to unauditable ban lists, stands directly opposed to the privacy assurances that the term end-to-end encryption is understood to convey. It's the same approach used by China to keep track of political conversations in services like WeChat, and has no place in a tool that claims to keep conversations private. So what they're trying to say here, let's make this a bit easier. They're not proposing to ban you from using end-to-end encryption. I think they know that ship has sailed. But they know that you can easily circumvent that. If you can get software on the operating system level or below that on a device, no matter if it's a desktop computer or your phone or an iPad or whatever, whatever it is, then you can read end-to-end encryption, because a message comes into your device, is encrypted with strong encryption. For you to be able to read it and to display it in plain text on the screen, the device will have to encrypt it. And what you're just doing is, getting the data once it's encrypted, right? And sending that on. You might even encrypt it, end-to-end encrypt it again, and send it to a government server. So basically, this client-side scanning is circumvention of end-to-end encryption. In a pretty straightforward way. I have other links in the show notes. If you speak German, the German Chaos Computer Club had a pretty good article on what they're trying to do and how it works. But while it would require a concerted political push, EU's higher powers are gearing up for such a battle. In late September, Statewatch published a note now being circulated by the current EU German presidency called, quote, security through encryption and security despite encryption, end quote, encouraging the EU's member states to agree to a new EU position on encryption in the final weeks of 2020. While conceding that, quote, the weakening of encryption by any means, including backdoors, is not a desirable option, end quote, the presidency note also positively quoted an EU counterterrorism coordinator, CTC paper from May, obtained and made available by German digital rights news site netzpolitik.org, which calls for what it calls a, quote, front door, a, quote, legal framework that will allow lawful access to encrypted data for law enforcement without dictating technical solutions for providers and technology companies. I mean, that's a backdoor. They want a backdoor, right? This whole front door bullshit is bullshit. It's a backdoor. It's a backdoor for law enforcement. But, you know, as any IT security consultant will tell you, or expert will tell you, you know, you'll have a backdoor and that will be used for legal spying. And then, which, you know, some people, maybe even the majority of people, for example, in Germany would agree with. I mean, the same people that think, okay, if we lock the whole population indoors for 3 months, you know, if we keep all the people safe with that, go for it, right? The same people would probably say, yeah, okay, if it's only used by government, go for it. Because they don't understand that a system like this will necessarily have security vulnerabilities. No matter what anybody says, all systems have security vulnerabilities, you know, which then, you know, to speak their own language would cause the Russians to come in and also spy on you. And, you know, that should end that discussion, but it never does for some reason. To keep quoting from this EFF article, we are in the first stages of a long anti-encryption march by the upper echelons of the EU, headed directly towards Europeans' digital front doors. It's the same direction as the United Kingdom, Australia, and the United States have been moving for some time. If Europe wants to keep its status as a jurisdiction that treasures privacy, it will need to fight for it. Which the private citizen is on the front line. Let me tell you. I also have a link to, if you speak German, to a good column by Julia Reda, who used to be in the European Parliament, who writes on Heise why this is happening now. And this is interesting. This is something I didn't know until today when I researched this. So the reason for why this is happening in the EU now is that 2 years ago, the EU, passed laws. They usually take, they're passed and then they go on the books and then it takes 2 years for them to come into effect. It's like the GDPR, so that member countries have time they have to implement these laws in local, in their local legislation. And so it always takes 2 years. But this has passed 2 years ago, and these laws, and they come into effect in December. And they essentially what they do is they say that internet communication services like messengers and VoIP systems that use the internet are included in the protections that the EU already has for electronic communications. So, like phone calls. So basically what this means is that spying on these services, for example, server-side, if they're not end-to-end encrypted, would be as illegal as, a telco listening to their customers' phone calls. So, I don't know, let's not use WhatsApp because they're end-to-end encrypted, but, Telegram is something I want to look at, and Telegram has some unencrypted chats, right? And the service provider could look at those, and this would make it as illegal as, telecom listening into the phone calls of their customers, which kind of makes sense why they're doing this now. And as Julia Reda also points out, this has become much more urgent now because with the pandemic, or as I now like to call it, the panicdemic, kind of like that, panicdemic, what has happened this year is that we've moved a lot of conversations and, important conversations onto the internet, right? And I'm not only talking VoIP, like, Zoom meetings and like, the school teaching your children, even although that, could also be important. You don't want that to be spied on. But I'm talking, you're talking to a lawyer. You're talking to your lawyer because you're in a criminal lawsuit or something. you usually do that face to face, right? I mean, pretty much any lawyer will even tell you not to discuss something like this on the phone. Now, you imagine that a lot of people can't do that anymore now, and they have to use internet-based communications services, messengers, VoIP systems to do this kind of stuff. So this law becomes more and more important. And on the flip side, it becomes more and more important for these people who don't want to access, or who want access to that, to circumvent that. And I kind of feel like they're using the pandemic to do that. They're kind of doing that now to get while everybody's distracted with other stuff and with other horrible laws that I talked about previously on this show. They're trying to get these mandatory law enforcement backdoors or front doors or whatever passed, so that that would obviously then supersede these other laws, right? Because if you have a law, it will still be illegal for a service provider to spy on conversations on their servers, but it won't be illegal for government agencies to do that. Or, for law enforcement, especially if they get a warrant, or, in many cases now they seem to finagle it or change the laws that they don't need warrants anymore. So who knows? Especially under, new COVID-based laws, they just go like, oh, this is important to fight the pandemic, and then, all bets are off. Now, interestingly, in Germany, there's been a discussion, and I've got links to that in the show notes as well, about these evil internet messengers, like Telegram's been mentioned a lot, which the German government has identified as, quote, reservoirs of extremism, where people... Generally, a lot of people have been kicked off Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, or censored because they were talking, they were sharing information that wasn't approved by the WHO, or whoever government mandated health person is the current holder of wisdom. They were sharing other information and got kicked off that, and a lot of these people have just moved to messengers. Some of them encrypted messengers, to have groups and to share this kind of information. And of course, there's also terrorists on there, and probably child porn. So we need to get on there, and we need to defeat that encryption. I mean, who would have guessed, if you kicked all these people off social media, that they would find other ways to talk to each other that you can't easily censor? I mean, who would have guessed that would happen? Interestingly, another comment on Heise, Stefan Krempel, writing about a German government official, basically saying literally, so this is like the top security official in the Interior Ministry, basically saying, yes, we want to go back to the time, quote, to the time of the analog telephone. And that just puts a bow on it for me. I mean, that says everything. That says it all. These people, they want back to that time. They want back to a time where basically they could pretty much spy on anybody they wanted, if they wanted to. And I think that's very dangerous. I put some links in the show notes about the security implications, which I really don't want to get into because, I mean, that should be obvious. Just quickly quoting, Bruce Schneier said in 2016 on similar issues, we're not being asked to choose between security and privacy. We're being asked to choose between less security and more security. And that pretty much sums it up. All systems have backdoors and vulnerabilities. Even the backdoors have backdoors. And if you compromise security for law enforcement, you basically compromise security. Because, I mean, also these people are not the brightest. There will be access keys. They will get out. They get hacked. And we're talking local law enforcement in some cases. You're not even talking like the NSA. We're talking like a Snohomish County Sheriff's Office or whatever, right? Or some hillbilly hick sheriff in Tennessee getting encryption keys, right? It'll be just time. It'll be just a matter of time until all this shit gets out, and people, then everybody, oh my God, the Russians hacked the system and now they're controlling the country. It's obvious that that's going to happen. But I think the more important thing is what is happening here is that the people in power, they want access to this data because, it gives them control. I mean, I can't even so much blame investigators, right? And law enforcement officers, because it makes their job a hell of a lot easier. And it's kind of their job to advocate for this kind of thing. It's just we should be giving it to them. I've been saying for years, and I've been writing for years, and I do this, and I write, in Heise about this stuff, and then I go to a security conference, and these people, actually the law enforcement people from the police, from the intelligence services, they come up to me and they're like, yeah, can't you maybe not write that? And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not on your side in this. It's, yes, it makes their job easier, but they can do their job without it. You can catch these people. You can catch pedophiles and, child abusers and terrorists. You can easily catch them without reading their encrypted communications. And you can see, if you look at any anti-terror investigation in Germany in the last, pretty much 20 years, all the people they caught, there was never a point where they could read their messages. I mean, this is all metadata analysis, good old-fashioned like legwork. You can put a GPS sensor on their car. You can follow them around. Just look at the cyberbunker case that I talked about on the show. They were unable to penetrate most of the traffic going in and out of that data center. And they still had a lot of ways to figure out what was going on, surveil people, just break in the sites that were being hosted on the server. There's all these kind of things. You can have informants. You can do all of that, and they continue to actually arrest and prosecute criminals and all shows you that they don't need this kind of access. I don't begrudge them asking for it. I begrudge the politicians that actually try to pass these laws, because they're not law enforcement and this is not their job, and they either don't understand what they're talking about or they don't care, and they just want more power. And this goes right into what I've been talking a lot about these days, about with the coronavirus restriction. This goes hand in hand. They're eroding our civil liberties left and right, and all these mandates. Doesn't matter if or these laws as we have them in Germany now. It doesn't matter if you think they help or they are justified. You have to think about all the collateral damage they bring with them, right? So if you allow the police to enter my residence to check if there's people in here having like illegal parties, are they now allowed to put a Trojan on my computer? Right? And even if not, mandates like, the local government being able to tell me when I can go out or not. That is a control measure. They have, you can't deny that they have a lot more control measures right now as long as the pandemic's going on, right? Of course, yes, if the pandemic is over, but will the pandemic ever be over? That's the question. Will they not find enough positive tested people to keep it going indefinitely? I don't know that, but they could change those laws, but they have more control mechanisms now, and that goes hand in hand with this kind of crypto war stuff, because they want that as well. Then these people are not, for some reason, and a lot of the politicians voting for this in parliament, in the EU parliament, in the German parliament, wherever you are, if you're in the US, a lot of these politicians actually mean well. There are a few who I think are corrupt or who are compromised by the security state. There are probably a few people who are evil, who just want the control. But the majority, I think, don't understand what they're doing. They actually think this is a good idea. But it's nonetheless dangerous. They're not happy with just having the ability to tell you when you can go out and when you can go shopping and when you have to wear a mask and when you have to do this and when you can breathe and when you can't breathe, right? They also want to read all of your messages if they want to. They want backdoor every device. They want access to every server. And I'm asking myself why. I'm saying, we're living under the rule of law in a democracy. I don't know where you're listening to this podcast from, but I'm in Germany, right? We are a federal republic. We're a democracy. We have elected leaders, and nobody has been able to explain to me why they should have this power. Why should they be able to read our messages? For what reason? And the only thing they can say is, oh my God, there's child porn and there's terrorism. We had worse terrorism in Germany in the 70s. The worst terrorism we ever had in Germany was in the 70s, which was the Rote Armee-Fraktion, RAF. We never had anything comparable, certainly not in the last 20 years, even though they've all been saying, oh my God, 9/11, London subway bombing, Germany's going to be next. No. And they have proven that they can actually catch these people, as I said before. So I don't understand why they have these rules. With the coronavirus stuff, yes, I do feel there is an argument there. People are making an argument. They're saying, this is so dangerous, and the health of the public is so important that we need to do that. That is not something I agree with, especially if that leads to let's get rid of inalienable personal rights that have been enshrined in the Constitution, even if it's just for the time of the pandemic. I don't agree with that, but they at least have an argument. When it comes to the crypto wars, they do not have a single argument. The only thing they're saying is, if we can read all your messages, it would make our lives a hell of a lot easier. To which I say, your lives are not supposed to be easy. If you're an investigator if you work for the criminal police, your life should be hard. Your job should be hard. It should be hard to catch criminals, right? It shouldn't be too hard. They shouldn't be able to get away. But, we have, even if John Brennan doesn't agree, we have we have due process, and we have innocent until proven guilty. I mean, I know John Brennan thinks it's somebody's innocent until alleged to be a criminal. I know that's what he said. But he worked for the CIA. He probably still works for the CIA. He never really quit the agency, right? But yeah, and if you work on a fucking intelligence service, your job should be even harder. Yes, it should be fucking hard for you to spy on the citizens of a democratic country. Yes, that's the point. It should be you should actually largely be unable to do that. I think. But obviously me and people who make the laws disagree in quite a few ways. But that's it about the crypto wars. I hope I gave you a good primer on what historically happened and what's happening right now. Obviously, this is an ongoing topic. if you're interested in this and how intelligence services and stuff do this, you could maybe also listen to. Now I have to look this up myself because I don't know by offhand which episode that was. By the way, if you go to privatecitizen.press and you scroll down, there's an all podcast episodes link, and you can see all the episodes, which is what I'm doing right now. And there was the episode called, what was it called? Where is it? It was called The Intelligence Coup of the Century, but I can't find it right now. Let's see which episode was that. Oh God, I have to. It's too many episodes. That was episode 14. So that's an interesting episode. That's about the BND and the CIA basically owning a Swiss company that made encryption devices for embassies. And that's just another piece of the puzzle. It's basically also crypto wars. So I hope you have you've gotten a nice overview here, and obviously a topic that I'll keep covering on the show, because once Biden's in office, this will get back onto the agenda in the US, and I think the EU thing is still going on. I think in the EU they're kind of using the panicdemic. I like panicdemic. I don't know if I came up with that, but I like to think I did. They're obviously using that as a cover to pass these kind of laws. So we'll have to be vigilant, and I'll keep you up to date on that. Right. With that, I'm gonna save the recording here for a second, because I need to get another tea. So Trent, hey, good that you liked that. I hope that wasn't too boring. I try to make these things as interesting as possible with the rant interspersed here and there. But yeah. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna talk about feedback that I got from people. But before that, I'm just gonna run away for about 5 minutes. I think I need to go to the loo, and I have to get myself more tea. So please stay where you are, or get yourself your own drink, which is probably even better. And I'll be back. It wasn't too rantastic. Okay, I'll try to rant more. The feedback section is coming up. There'll be some rants in there, I'm pretty sure. See you in a bit. Well, cold brew coffee. That sounds amazing. That's not a bad idea. I should have done some of that. Although this Lapsang has a lot of caffeine. Well, it's tein, I think. But it's keeping me awake. Okay, see you in a bit. Okay, I'm back. It took me a little bit because the wife just came home. I was wondering why do I have to lean over, because I didn't change my mic boom. Yes, the wife just came home from doing science. Kind of wanted to say hello there. But I'm back, and I think we can continue this. Have a drink of water here. Let's get this podcast finished here. Okay. So now it's obviously time for that. It's time. Take two. And with that, we obviously reach that part of the show where I talk about feedback I've gotten from the producers, which other podcasts call listeners. But I do have listeners, but I have many producers who are listeners who write in or, do other stuff, help monetarily or, help in other ways. But some of them write in and they provide feedback, which I like very much and I think is great. So if you have feedback, if anything you heard there was unclear or you have a different opinion or whatever, please let me know. Don't just sit there and think, Fab's an idiot, he's totally wrong on Biden. Write me an email or contact me in other ways. There are ways mentioned in the show notes, as usual, private citizen or press. But let's get into the feedback I've received for this episode. So Fadi Mansour, who writes in quite a lot, and as usual is very thoughtful in his feedback, has sent me quite a lot of stuff. But I think he thinks he thinks well. He's a good thinker. I like the way he thinks, and I generally appreciate all feedback, but this is really good. So let's settle back and let's see what Fadi has to say. And this is regarding episode 48, which obviously was the previous episode where I had the discussion with Mike about the US presidential election. Anyway, Fadi says, "Let me first start by restating how important it is to be able to have a civil and reasonable discussion, even with the difference of opinion. But unfortunately, my impression was that both of you were coming from different a priori positions." That was probably correct. This was clear when Fab brought in the topic of the Biden laptop. On one hand, it's clear that you, so Fab me, you are willing to entertain that there's something worth seeing there. Well, for Mike, it was purely and clearly a continuation of the Trump camp ploy to muddy the waters with no root in reality. This is another instance of the phenomenon related to filter bubbles and what the no agenda folk call Dimension A and Dimension B. A little personal history. So Fadi is from Syria, in case you didn't know. He's not in Syria right now, but he was born there and originally came from Syria. A little personal history. When the rebellion started in Syria, it was clear after a while that you have two different camps that had a completely different view on what's happening. One camp believed that everybody is rebelling and the government is soon to fall, while the other didn't believe anything is happening and it's all exaggeration by foreign actors. Now, to my horror, I see the same thing happening in other areas, like the political situation in the United States and the whole world with COVID-19. And this is exactly why I like feedback, because, I have listeners from all over the world, from all kinds of different different backgrounds, and they have different viewpoints and feedback that they think about things that I could never think about and have experiences that I've never had. And so I appreciate stuff like this a lot. And I think Fadi is completely right here. just to have a quick interjection, I think the tragedy of this situation is not that this division is happening, but that you can't have a point in the middle, right? I imagine when you're in Syria and there's these two camps and these two belief systems or two dimensions or whatever, you can't be in the middle. You can't say, yeah, maybe not everybody's rebelling, and maybe it's not all foreign actors, but maybe it's both. Maybe there's truth in both, or whatever. Or the same thing with me and Mike discussing. I personally think it's both is true. I think the laptop was legit, and I think yes, it was also a ploy by the Trump administration or the Trump camp. I don't want to speak for Mike, but his opinion could be, and we didn't get into it that much, but his opinion could be that it was completely made up. I don't think that's right, but I think it's always a bit in the middle. Back to what Fadi says. My attempt at explaining this is simple enough. In all these cases, it's difficult to have first-hand information, and all of us rely on second, if not third-hand information. This brings up the important role news media is playing in shaping our worldview. And here the risk of having a monopoly on news propagation becomes very critical. I know that you believe in the importance of having independent media and the risk of having some organizations monopolizing media platforms and communication channels. While writing this, I can't help but think that if some algorithm would decide that this email or similar should not be delivered, I cannot help but think, what if some algorithm would decide this email or similar message, I think he means, should not be delivered? This is a very dangerous slippery slope. This, of course, brings to mind your recent favorite Picard quote with the first link. And when he mentioned that, maybe I should. You can never listen to Picard. There's never enough Picard in your life, so let's listen to that speech again. It's not that long.
There are some words I've known since I was a schoolboy. With the first link, the chain is forged. The first speech censored, the first thought forbidden, the first freedom denied, chains us all irrevocably. Those words were uttered by Judge Aaron Satie as wisdom and warning. The first time any man's freedom is trodden on, we're all damaged.
This very much applies to, end-to-end encryption as well. It's the same thing, right? If you say, somebody who you think is a child molester or a pedophile shouldn't have end-to-end encryption, it just follows from that nobody will at some point. Yes, so I think, again, interjecting here in what Fadi said, I think, of course there could be an algorithm. I think that this is why it's important, and that's kind of my, what I always mention, the OTG approach, of the grid, to have systems that are resilient against this kind of stuff. And email, for example, is a great system. I mean, yes, Google service could decide not to deliver your message, but if you talk to me and I have my own email server, or I have an independent company, for me it's mailbox.org running my email server, and you have another, or you have your own, or whatever, then it's hard, if not impossible, for them to intercept that. Same reason why I think podcasting is so important. Podcasting has I feel become an immense tool to people who reject this monopolization, for lack of a better word. I don't think it's not really a monopoly, but we all know what Fadi means by that. Of the media landscape, if you only have like 5 big TV networks and your mainstream, in news sites. So in Germany, Der Spiegel, Die Zeit, FAZ, Süddeutsche Zeitung, or the New York Times, the Washington Post, and your local paper, then that's a monopolization of public opinion. And that has always been the case. But the new thing about the internet is that we can get around that. Everybody can publish. Yes, that brings the downside that you don't know what is, fake news, as Trump would say, or as Bernays would say, propaganda. But you have the ability to go to people who you trust. I have my own server. I can't be deplatformed with this podcast, right? They can't throw me off. I mean, I can throw me off. I live stream this on Twitch. They can throw me off Twitch. I upload that recording to YouTube. They can throw me off YouTube, but they can't kill the podcast, which is why I'm doing a podcast. First of all, I like the medium. I love podcasting since 2006, of course. But it's one of these Fediverse indie net things. This is why I move more and more to my personal blog, fab.industries, by the way. That is important. That is, that is a way we can be resilient against these things. Anyway, before I get into too much on my soapbox here, back to Fadi. Let me switch to a different slippery slope now. Okay, we're sliding in a different direction now. Then uphill again or something. Different dimension. It's dimension B, slippery slope. During the discussion, Mike used the expression compassionate society. I have no doubts about Mike's good intentions, but hearing this as a slogan doesn't give me a very good feeling. Let me explain. I totally share the hope that humans in general would become more compassionate and helpful towards each other. I don't, by the way. And that's the big difference between me, one of the big difference between me and Mike, I feel. But okay. But how, says Fadi. So he shares that with Mike. But how? The risk I see is that this compassionate talk is sometimes used as a tool. One could say it's propaganda. Sometimes used as a tool so that more power is given to governments. And here the slippery slope begins. What liberties will be sacrificed so that everybody's nice to each other? Or right now, so that nobody gets the virus. For this, my position is this. No, I don't want compassion by decree. People have the right to be jerks. I like that, by the way. I think that should be one of the default slogans of the private citizen. People have the right to be jerks. The private citizen, fighting for your right to be a jerk. But this wouldn't stop me or anybody from seeking out and supporting compassionate people. This is the only right way, in my opinion, to build compassion. It's not my job or anybody's to start imposing this. Of course, this discussion would now devolve into what could or could not be acceptable in society. And to make it short, the less rules, the better. More rules means more power concentrated in one place, which will be the target of the nastiest people to hold. So the power. Caveat emptor. I will stop here. And again, keep up the good work. Many thanks to you and Mike, and I would love to hear more interesting discussions. And I do so too. I hope I get Mike on again, and I hope I also get other people on. And, if you want to be on the show, if you want to nominate somebody who you think I could contact or whatever, please, get in contact. Very, very true things. I think the less is better. That's also, I think Fadi's written other feedback emails or messages I can remember where that was kind of his thing, and I think that's good. That's a good approach. I recently heard John C. Dvorak, I think, on No Agenda, said, people think the government needs to do all these things, and he said, the less a government does, the better it usually is for the people. And I do believe that. That is probably the difference, the fundamental difference I have with many of my friends who are, liberals and progressives, and especially the progressive thinking seems to be the government needs to do all these things. Humans, we need to mandate that people behave better, that they care about the environment, that they protect other people from the virus and stuff. And I just fundamentally don't think that way. I don't think that works. I don't think you can force. It's kind of like what Fadi says here. I don't think you can force people into being nice or into protecting other people. They need to want that themselves, right? You can have and you should have a framework in society where certain things are not done, right? You need to make murder illegal and things like that, and you can enforce that. You can actually enforce that, but you can't force people to be nice to each other. And I agree with Fadi, if you go down that path, that leads to a dystopia that to imagine that is horrible. I mean, that's Aldous. It's pretty much Aldous Huxley. That's Brave New World. Maybe I should read that again. I had some other feedback from our anonymous Canadian, who's also somebody who's written in before. He or she sent me an encrypted message. So let's use that. Let's do that while we still can. It still is legal in Canada and here in Germany, in the EU. The anonymous Canadian says, I should probably say he or she or they. There might be LGBTQ, LLIIP, something. So they are saying, just got most of the way through your newest... Why do I read like I have a brain tumor? Just got most of the way through your newest record-breaking content episode and enjoying it. With a couple of items I've been meaning to send and have a few minutes to do so. This article is interesting. He sends an article to the Ottawa Citizen. It starts with a quick rundown that follows the direction of the headline, the creation of a propaganda department, but finishes by talking about how the Canadian military started collecting social media data on Canadian citizens. This is indeed very interesting. I should do an episode at some point. Probably, it's going to be next year, to be fair. But, I'm currently rereading Propaganda by Edward Bernays, which is a book from the 20s. Which explains public relations and propaganda, which is basically what Goebbels read, and stole all his ideas from to get Hitler to power. But propaganda is this is just a very timely book. I feel it's 100 years old now, and everything's coming back. Propaganda is a big thing. As you can read here in the Ottawa Citizen, Canadian military wants to establish new organization to use propaganda. Other techniques to influence Canadians. Of course, propaganda isn't new, right? Propaganda has always been used. It's always used by governments. The German government uses it. Deutsche Welle is an example, which is kind of like the German Radio Free Europe. Radio Free Europe is an example, CIA operation. Now allegedly not a CIA operation anymore, but... Again, can you ever be not a CIA operation? Really? Once you've been a CIA operation, the Canadian government seems to be ahead with everything. I'm not up to what's going on. I just read stories once in a while, and I see pictures here again of Justin Trudeau, who now has a beard and looks like a villain. He looks a bit like a... I don't know. No, he's a baby-faced for a Bond villain, but, he looks like Mirror Universe Trudeau is what he looks like. So they are all in. They are very, very clear about the fact that they want propaganda. And, this is a long article, as our anonymous Canadian says, is, they then talk about... all the data they collect on Canadians, which, that goes hand in hand, right? This is to bring it. I don't know if you can hear that, but there's a helicopter coming for me, I think. Or maybe that was a small plane. It was a bit too fast, didn't sound like it was flying a helicopter. Maybe they're not coming for me just yet. So it is definitely interesting, and it goes hand in hand, right? This spying on people and propaganda. It's kind of like it is. Propaganda is like advertising, right? To advertise to somebody, to have effective PR, you need to know what their worst fears are, what their desires are. And propaganda is kind of the same thing. The more you know about your citizens, the better the better propaganda you can do. But once I've reread Bernays, I'm gonna get into that. I'm gonna do a whole episode about that, because I think that is is something we need to be aware of right now. Anyway, our anonymous Canadian goes on. The next topic is the rolling out of tighter coronavirus restrictions. As of yesterday, British Columbia has asked for all non-essential travel to be stopped, including reaching out to other provinces and the federal government to aid in this. I always say, I'd like to hear from other people wherever they are, what's going on there. It's still the case, if you have a boots on the ground report from wherever you are. As you can see in this case, you can be anonymous. You can send it to me encrypted. I have a whistleblower drop where I don't even know who you are. It's all in the show notes. There's a contact link there. It goes to my blog. It explains how the whistleblower drop works, everything. All private gatherings are now prohibited. All indoor public spaces will now require masks. Oddly enough, COVID-19 does not seem to spread in restaurants or schools, so masks are not required in those two locations. Theaters and gyms remain open. Religious places of worship, such as churches, have been told they cannot have mass. However, the virus does not survive at baptisms and funerals, so those are still okay. I like his sarcasm here. It's like, is like the virus being nocturnal, right? You have to close down the restaurants at night, or people who drink alcohol are most acceptable, so you need to close. I mean, this is interesting now, because you can see pretty much every country is clamping down again, but it's like wildly diverging. If you talk to people from the US and different states there, or in Canada in this case, or Australia or Germany, it's all different. Like, it seems like the virus behaves completely different whatever country it's in, because we all have to have different rules. So once again, it appears to have been a liberal rolling, I like how he puts this, a liberal rolling of AT&T dice in creating these rules. This is all due to, quote, record number of cases, end quote, being recorded. Personally, I think that if you are only testing people that have symptoms, you should probably have a high positive rate, especially considering we know there's a high false positive rate. And I would also suspect that when you go from 1,000 tests per day to 10,000 tests per day, under those circumstances, it would be magic if you didn't see that alarming spike they are referring to. Yeah, spike is, the cases are spiking. It's one of the propaganda terms. If you go from 1,000 tests to 10,000, you would imagine you have 10 times the cases. Yeah, probably not. It's not how statistic works, but it's gonna go up significantly. I don't think he's talking about high, or she or they are talking about high positive. Sorry, I always assume that's my white male privilege speaking. I always assume anonymous people are men, white men. Old white men like me, that's just the way it goes. I'm never gonna get rid of that. Like me saying, I've tried for years. We'll just have to deal with that. There you go. So they say high false positive. I've been doing a lot of research into this, and I don't think they're actually the high. There is such a high false positive rate. The more I understand how, especially, I'm not talking about the antibody tests. I think the PCR tests actually do not have such a high false positive rate. I think because basically, the PCR can be false positive, but the people doing it in a lab aren't idiots. And you will, it's like you do a lot of samples at the same time, and you will have like one row will be false positive. So you'll notice like, okay, maybe I double. I filled those test tubes twice or something like this. They'll figure out generally that there are false positives. I've talked to a lot of people who do these PCRs for these tests now, and I think what we initially thought were a lot of false positives is just the way the virus behaves. I think it's become incredibly clear that there's not a clear correlation between somebody testing positive, i.e. a case, and then they becoming sick, or being infectious. So I think we have a lot of people that have no symptoms that test positive. I think we don't really know in which case people are actually infectious, which is why I think all these rules are just, pissing into the wind and hoping that it doesn't come back to hit us again. That's where I see this coming from. And you know, them later mention the Elon Musk thing, so we're going to get into that. If you get into antibody tests, all bets are off. Anyway, continuing in this email. But I'm glad I do not live in the province of Manitoba. Absolutely no guests allowed in your house, not even your child if they live with the other parent. That is horrible. Stores not allowed to sell non-essential items and must either remove them or rope them off. That's great. So you can. This makes complete sense. So you go into a store, right, and you can only buy the canned food, right? The non-essential, like the magazines, are like in the next shelf, but it's roped off, so you don't buy. What? I mean, you're in the store. I mean, if you're exposing yourself or others to the, you're doing it. Doesn't matter what you're buying. I mean, come on. Who is that idiotic? Manitoba. Where is that? I have to look that up. Maybe it's. I mean, I have this thing about people living in like mountainous regions. These villages where they just get weird. People living in mountainous Manitoba is up there. Okay, Winnipeg isn't. Oh well. Okay, I actually have. I do not know enough about Canadian geography, so I had to look it up. I don't know. It looks like Canada, like the rest of Canada. It's not like Yukon or whatever. Or up there. What's Nunavut? I didn't even know that existed. Is this? I mean, are they just exposed to too much fresh air up there? Is that why they come up with idiotic rules? I don't know. Anyway, continuing. I feel sorry for Elon Musk. 4 tests in one day, 2 came back positives, 2 came back negative. Not too sure how we are supposed to process that kind of diagnosis. As always, keep up the good work, and I look forward to finishing this current episode. Yeah, I mean, Elon Musk tweeted that he got an antibody test, and he says something extremely bogus is going on. I don't like Elon Musk, but he is funny on occasion. Something extremely bogus is going on. I was tested for COVID 4 times today. 2 tests came back negative, 2 came back positive. Same machine, same test, same nurse. Rapid antigen test from BD. To which Stephen King replies, "You're POS. Piece of shit." I don't think Elon Musk cares, Stephen. Because he's not the richest man in the world. Elon is. But, I mean, no, he's not a piece of... What that is the antibody test. The problem is, PCR, right? Okay, that's... The PCR test is completely reliable. I think where you run, it kind of depends on where take your sample. So, how deep they go into your nose. It's completely different if they take it from your throat, right? The PCR is very, 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 very... Again, I can't find the word I'm looking for. It's incredibly good at, you put your little Q-tip somewhere, and then it's incredibly good at figuring out if there's virus particles there. I think the problem we have right now is the fact that they're there, how spread are they everywhere else? Does that mean you're infectious? We don't know really about that. Like the antigen test seems to be a lot more iffy. I think, there's an issue with we don't know how long people have antigens. It seems to be relatively like we don't really know how long they're there, how many they're there, when, and that seems to be all still up in the air. We don't seem to have much data about this, and I think the general problem is, again, their antigen tests don't equal antigen tests. I think this is the quick test. That's the problem. I think the method they're using might be the problem. I mean, there are things where you can do antigen tests where they, I think in German it's called the Titter. Okay, I'll have to look that up. What that is called in English. So it's like a concentrate. Is that in English? Yeah, that's in English. It's called titer. Titer in English. Wikipedia says titer testing employs serial dilution to obtain approximate quantitative information. Blah blah blah. It's a way of expressing concentration. So there's a way that you can assess the antibody titer, which is basically this is if you've been vaccinated against something in the past. They use this to see how many antibodies you still have. To see if you need to be vaccinated again, for stuff where you need to be vaccinated multiple times and stuff like that. And these quick tests don't do that. They're just like pretty much you have like you put blood on a strip. It's like like a pregnancy test, like peeing on and it does things, and then it tells you yes or no. And that system seems to be not exactly fine tuned. Yeah. Anyway, so yes, the testing is. I've never been. I've always been I've been criticizing this testing from the beginning because I think a lot of people are being tested when they shouldn't be tested and when it makes no sense. It's kind of like the roping off the aisle in the supermarket. Like for a lot of people, it doesn't make any sense to be tested, right? So for me, for example, I'm like a freelancer. I sit at home all day. If I now start developing symptoms that look like I got SARS-CoV-2 infection, I'm not going to go out and get tested, right? I might as well just quarantine myself for 2 weeks. I just need to organize somebody to bring me food. but me going out, I might actually be infecting people if I go to a doctor or, a lab or whatever. Or I might actually not have a coronavirus infection, COVID, and I might go to the testing place and somebody coughs on me and then I've got COVID, so that would be the amazing thing because I'd be negative. So I'd not be infected. I'd go to the office there, right? I'll go to my doctor, right? I'll sit in the waiting room. Somebody coughs on me. I get infected right that moment. Then 10 minutes later, they test me. But obviously at that moment, you can't detect the infection yet. So I'll be negative, right? So I'll be going out for a week or whatever, but I'm actually just being infected. And then I get symptoms. So yeah, it just doesn't make any sense in so many cases. Speaking of not making sense, also we had some discussions on the, we have this patron-only Discord server, which, if you become a patron, you get access to that. It's a little bit extra thing that we have going on. Anyway, Barry Williams, who's been supporting the show for a long time and who writes in from time to time, was talking in there, discussing. He chimed in from South Australia, where he lives. And they just had their lockdown lifted. People might have read about this. This was someone lied during contact tracing and basically said he got a pizza from a pizza place. And in fact, he was actually working at the pizza place. But for some reason, he didn't want to admit to that. And so they decided he'd gotten the virus off the food. And then they decided there was a dangerous mutation happening in South Australia where this virus could now do all kinds of new things, including infecting people from pizzas. And they locked down. It had like 1 million people locked down, I think. And then they realized the guy had lied and there were like 13 cases and they'd all been in quarantine. They were working at the pizza place. They've been in quarantine from the beginning and now they don't have lockdown anymore. Anyway, Barry was bitching. I think we had some feedback from him. I don't know, was it last show? No, I have to look that up, right? Oh, God. Why am I not writing these things down when I prepare the show? And then I have to look it up. I don't know. We had we had him saying like he didn't. It was in the last episode. He was talking about how he can't cycle and he can't do exercise and all of this. But at least now the lockdown's lifted again. But we were kind of discussing that in the Discord. And he also said, according to the police, purchasing alcohol is an essential service. So that's okay for the next, so this was while the lockdown was still in effect, for the next 6 days. Very Australian, which indeed it is. But heaven forbid you leave your house to exercise, for fuck's sake. And then, we were discussing this, and another patron commented on how idiotic this is, banning outside exercise. And I completely agree with that. I think that's just dumb. I mean, especially when gyms are closed, you actually, I think I talked about this on the show before as well. You're at that point, you're not helping, you're actually making people's health worse by not letting them exercise. And I still reiterate, there hasn't been any scientific data that suggests people actually get infected outside in the fresh air with wind going on. Apparently, it doesn't seem to be happening. So, not allowing people to go outside is dumb in the first place, and then outlawing exercise is actually that should be that's it. That creates more health problems than it solves, obviously. Anyway, if you don't agree with that, which might be a distinct possibility, please, again, I implore you, write me, contact me. There's a link in the show notes under producer feedback at the bottom. It says contact me. It's also at the very bottom of the show notes page is a contact link, so please do. And then you can do that. You will become a producer because you're helping produce the show. But another thing I kind of need is a bit of monetary incentive because I'm trying to survive here as a freelancer, and I spend a lot of time. I record this live to tape, so that doesn't. I mean, if you go to Twitch or to YouTube, archive these things, and you can look at a stream. You will see how it works. How I record everything straight live to tape, and that doesn't actually take that long. But I spent a lot of time preparing the show and stuff like that. And if you get value from that, you get it for free. The only thing I ask is to give me some value back. And that's the value for value model as pioneered by John C. Dvorak and Adam Curry on the No Agenda show. And I live by this model as well, which means you don't have to give me anything. If you want to, you can become a patron on Patreon, link in the show notes, or you can send me a one-off contribution via PayPal. producers@fab.industries is the PayPal address. producers@fab.industries. I'm still trying to figure out a more privacy respecting way to get money across, I can't deal with bitcoins for reasons that, let's not get into that. That'll be another rant for quite a while. But if you have a suggestion, please again contact me. And if you watch the recording live on Twitch, you can also subscribe. Which anybody who has a Amazon Prime subscription gets one free Twitch subscription. You just log in with your Prime account on Twitch, and you can support me for free, which also works, which is also great. And quite a few people do that. So now comes the time of the show where I thank them. But first of all, I have to thank Bytemark at bytemark.co.uk, who provide the servers to me for free that I use to distribute the audio files to you, which I could do without them. They're a hoster from the UK. Bytemark, bytemark.co.uk. And also, thanks to Raul Kabzali, who made the theme tune that I've licensed for the show. And then the only thing that's left for me to do here is to thank everybody who is support the show financially. You keep the show going. I appreciate it very much. So, keeping the show on the air. Niall Donegan, Michael Mullen-Jensen, Jonathan M. Hathy, Dave, Butterbeans, Georges Walther, Steve Hoth. Okay, I need some more tea here, sorry. Sorry, Steve. Steve Hose, Mark Holland, Shelby Groover, Vlad, Jackie Plage, 1i11G, Kai Sears, Philipp Klostermann, Jaroslav Lichtblau, Fadi Mansour, IKN, Matt Jellyman, Joe Poser, Dirk Didi, David Potter, Mika, Dave Amrish, Martin, SJ, Ricky M, Drive Zero, Jonathan Edwards, Barry Williams, Mr. Amish, Whitehouter Sadauskas, Neil, Captain Eckhead, Gal Taran, and Indie Gamiacs, who is running a cool podcast about indie games, I believe. Thanks to all of you. And if you want to participate in the value for value model and you want to be anonymous, please let me know. You can do that in Patreon. I will keep you off this list if you don't want to be mentioned. That goes without saying, but I thought I should maybe say it. Well, I've said it now. And that's it. That's it for me for today. As I said, I'm planning to do kind of 2 more shows this year. So if everything goes according to plan, I'll put another show out this week, and then I'll have one next Wednesday, which will be the recap of the year 2020 in all its non-existent glory, in all its hurt and pain and horribleness. Until then, until the next episode, thanks for listening. I've been Fab, coming to you from Düsseldorf in lockdown, saying, wherever you are, whatever restrictions there are, remember, once in a while, it keeps you sane. If you think to yourself, what would Malcolm Reynolds do at this point? Which is probably he would aim to misbehave. See you next time. Thanks for listening to The Private Citizen, defending your right to have something to hide. So, here we go. That is another podcast recorded. And if you're still watching this, I would like you to know the idea is that I'll record episode 50, the big 50, on Friday. Which I'm not going to divulge the topic yet because I don't know. I still have some research to do. I'm not 100% sure. I need to read some things before I commit to doing that episode. But I'll have some content on Friday. There's enough to talk about anyway. And then I don't know when I'm going to do that yet. So I have a streaming schedule. Usually fab.industries/stream. Usually that will have recording dates on there. But currently my schedule is just all over the place and I can't commit to a time. So it'll probably be Friday in the evening. I started streaming today at 7:45 CET, probably around that same time. We'll see. Maybe a bit earlier, whatever I can do. And then last episode of the year is going to be next Wednesday, and I don't know if I have a schedule for that. Just keep an eye on fab.industries for everything. That's usually where all the important information is. And like and subscribe and read my Substack at Fabsh, Fabsh, Foxtrot Alpha Bravo Sierra Hotel.substack.com, fabsh.substack.com. Newsletter, awesome. Thanks for watching. Trent, in case you're not there because you're making breakfast or eating breakfast. Thanks for being there. Thanks everybody for watching this. I appreciate it very much. I will now edit this podcast and get it out. But first I need to say hello and spend some time with the wife because we haven't seen each other all day. And that's the thing to do. And I want to know what happened in the lab. Maybe we got some interesting lab gossip going on or something. That's always that's the thing I live for. But before we do that, I will try to rate you somewhere. But it's nobody really. Is nobody? Oh God! Is there nobody streaming today that I usually watch? Oh, let's do some research. I mean, these people are all offline. Everybody's offline. What's going on? Twit's doing This Week in Tech. I mean, okay, I could rate you to This Week in Tech, but I don't think Twit doesn't really need the viewership, do they? But I mean, that's probably closest to what I've been talking about. I don't even know, is that a rerun? Are they rerunning things?
Insiders, so we kind of...
there's Windows Weekly is going on. So why not? If you want some Windows propaganda now, I'm gonna rate you over to Windows Weekly. So now I would just set that. Now I need to figure out how that goes again. That works. I wonder why that actually didn't list this channel here, even though I'm following them. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it very much. I'm going to send you over to Twit now. See what Paul Thurrott's doing, who is at least one person with more gray hair than me. So that's kind of pushing up my ego. Thanks for watching. Hopefully see you on Friday. I think that will be my next stream. It's kind of the plan. So that let's apparently I can't rate them. Maybe they're not rateable. Why are they not rateable? That's dumb. Hello? No, that doesn't work. Okay. Well, you don't want the viewership then. Okay. What else do we got? What else going on? Yoxcast is playing Blood Bowl. I'll try rating you to Yoxcast now. See if that works. Okay, here we go. Goodbye.